And joining me now, three-time Pulitzer Prize winner and New York Times columnist, Tom Friedman. Tom, you look at the situation now. One of the things that is very clear is when the American economy is doing badly, the support for being environmental in any sense of the word declines. So are you pessimistic about the prospects of really far-reaching, the kind of far-reaching change you talk about in the book, to have a new energy future for us?
You'll get the most revolution you can get freed from a kind of cash for clunkers. It'll be cash for green. We will buy, induce, and subsidize people to move there, but you won't get scale change. And that's, I think, going to be really one of the challenges. One of the former GM executives, said this, and it shows you the kind of weird world we're in. On the one hand, the U.S. taxpayers, they bought General Motors. We own General Motors now. We said to them, make more fuel-efficient cars of the 21st century. But then we said, no gasoline tax. No gasoline tax to create the consumers who'd want to buy those cars. And this guy said, well, that's like telling every shirt maker in America to only make size smalls, but never asking anyone to go on a diet. You're not going to sell a lot of size smalls, and that's really what I worry without that price signal.
But isn't part of the problem with this revolution, and a lot of people hear you and other people and say, how can you have a technological revolution that is entirely produced by government regulations, government subsidies, government taxes, and you're trying to give people the same product they already have, which is electricity.
Right, which is light mobility or heating and cooling. That is the challenge. I don't think it's impossible at all. Look at the Europeans. Denmark has, West gasoline in Denmark, around $9, $10 a gallon. Let's see, Denmark, 1 out of every 3 wind turbines in the world come from Denmark. The 2 leading bio fuel companies in the world, Novozymes and Danesco, Danish companies. They created an environment where there was a huge incentive to invest in these alternatives, and now they've created homegrown export industries on the basis of these technologies.
And the United States is behind in all these areas.
Yeah, we are behind. Lazard Investment Bank did a study of the top 10 wind, solar, and battery companies in the world by market cap, and as I recall, 5 of them were American, 5 out of the top 30. And
more Japanese, more Chinese,
exactly, more European,
list.
exactly. Imagine if Microsoft were a Swiss company, if IBM were a Japanese company, if Google were a Chinese company, if Intel were a Spanish company. What would our economy look like? Well, one of the things that I've really been trying to argue in my book, whenever I speak to an audience, they say, well, we're skeptical about climate change. What I always do is I hold in my book and say, oh, you don't believe in hot? No problem. Anyone here got an eraser? Let's just take off hot. In a flat and crowded world, what does that mean? In a world where more and more people can see how we live and aspire to how we live, a middle-class lifestyle, American-sized houses, cars, and Big Macs, okay. In a flat world and a crowded world, a world we know, barring a pandemic, is going to go from 6.7 billion today to 9.2 billion by 2050. In a flat and crowded world, what do you think the demand for, where's oil going to go? It's going to go through the roof. Well, who's empowered by that? So let's see. We have 2 future paths. One is to say, let's have a future that's built around a commodity that's controlled by the worst authoritarian governments, some of whom have drawn a bullseye on our back. Or let's build a future controlled by a technology, which we specialize in, which we're really good at innovating, that we would control and also produce a much more pollution and climate-free and climate-friendly world.
But let's talk about the climate change crisis,
Please.
the climate gate.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that there is greater uncertainty around the issue of global warming, and that there has been some effort to kind of simplify the data and to give people a simpler picture about it?
Here's the way I personally look at it. The way I look at it is that what do we know? There's a greenhouse blanket around the Earth. That's why this greenhouse effect keeps Earth at this wonderfully moderate temperature. It's made up of greenhouse gases, like carbon dioxide and methane. If you pump more greenhouse gases into it, that blanket will get thicker. It will trap more heat. That heat will melt ice and raise average temperatures. Now, where the climate skepticism comes in and the climate variability comes in is we don't know, because the climate system is so complicated, we don't know how fast that will happen. We don't know what other changes will come to moderate that, et cetera. But we know there's a chance that it could actually heat things up quickly. And if it does, that CO2 in the atmosphere, Fareed, stays there for about 3,000 years. So if it gets hot, it's going to get real hot for a long time. So why do you have insurance on your house? Why do I? Because I think there's a 5% chance that a storm may come and blow the roof off. Well, on the climate thing, let's say the skeptics and deniers are right. Let's say they're 50% chance. Okay, it's not what the IPCC, the UN report said 90%. That's 50% chance that we could trigger, you know, a world where you have a runaway warming. I don't know. I'd kind of buy some insurance myself. And so what I really find is that a lot of these people are conservatives. The same people who said if there's a 1% chance that someone has a nuclear weapon after 9/11, if there's just a 1% chance, we need to go into their country. If there's just a 1% chance. But here on climate, when there's better than some people think a 90% chance, but let's call it 50%, let's call it 30%. They say, no, I'm going to shake the dice. I don't know. It strikes me as kind of reckless. I myself, Fareed, am an innovation guy, you know. I'm not against Copenhagen. It's wonderful. I hope people make good promises. I hope it gives momentum. But ultimately, to me, it's about that price signal. Does it trigger innovation here in America? And you know, one of the points I try to make in the new edition of the book is that we have to understand the financial crisis and the economic crisis, and the environmental crisis. That what happened in 2008, they're actually one crisis. That's why I actually rewrote the first chapter. It's now called Why Citibank, Iceland's Banks, and the Ice Banks of Antarctica all melted at the same time. Or if you don't like that, why Bear Stearns and the polar bear both faced extinction at the same time. Because they were actually one crisis. Why? They were both based on the same accounting. We allowed people in the financial realm to massively underprice risk, privatize the gains, and socialize the losses. And you know what? We do the same in the environment. We allow people to massively underprice the risk of carbon emissions, privatize the gains, cheap coal-based or energy or gas, and then socialize the losses by putting all those CO2 molecules in the atmosphere, charging them our kids' Visa cards that will be paid in the future in the form of climate change. So we're actually behaving in both the market and Mother Nature in the same way, and that's why we need sustainability, the ethic and concept of sustainability, both in the market and Mother Nature.
I have to ask you this before I let
Please.
you go. If you really do believe what you say about climate change and what you say in the book about climate change, you've got to be pretty gloomy and pessimistic because a lot of this has already happened.
Yeah. Fareed, you know, if you woke me up at 2 in the morning and said, Tom, do we have a chance? Are we cooked? You know, I'd probably tell you, just thought are we cooked? Yeah, we're cooked. Let me go back to sleep. If you then gave me about 20 minutes for my eyes to clear and see the picture of my girls, you know, in our bedroom, I'd say, no, we're not cooked. There's no way you can be a parent now. I don't live my life that way. People call me a congenital optimist. Yes, I am. Optimism has its own energy. I believe you never know. I'm not a technological determinist, but I do believe in the power of technology and the power of human ingenuity, and I will not surrender to the pessimists on this.
Tom Friedman, always a pleasure.
Thanks, Fareed.
And we will be right back.